Welcome back to Tyler's Yarns. This week we've got a super exciting episode. First we're going to do an intro.
An intro?
Yeah, it's start of the intro.
Didn't you just do the intro?
Nah, we're going to get an intro next week. We haven't got one yet, but still waiting for the music to be made. Firstly, we're going to start off the episode. What's one thing that happened this week to you that
was good?
Was good?
We had a pretty successful weekend in store, so that was pretty good.
Last weekend or this weekend?
Both,
yeah.
Both.
It's been a pretty good, been pretty good since we opened.
Yeah, so that's one good thing. What about one good thing that happened to you?
Yeah, so same thing. Good in store on both weekends. Now getting back into the rhythm of things because we missed our last podcast last week with High, just because he
couldn't make it.
Couldn't make it.
Oh,
so we're trying to get an episode out a week, and we missed last week. So it's good to get back into a rhythm.
Nice little week break after 3 podcasts.
Yeah. So doing these podcasts hard. It takes a lot of time to like organize them and stuff like that, which is, it's exciting because we get to do a lot of stuff, and we get to see a lot of positive feedback from our YouTube and our Spotify and stuff like that.
Yeah, and just friends reaching out as well. Some of my friends reached out and said that the podcast had gone real well and that they're listening. And even how many listeners we're getting is
we're getting heaps of listens, which is like such a positive
huge
thing.
Positive, yeah.
But yeah, so today's episode we're going to be going into Australian vintage, Australian reselling.
Yeah. What it's like buying vintage in Australia at the moment and in past years.
Yeah, because we've got sort of like 5 years experience. We can sort of like say what we've done in the last 5 years and the differences, you know.
And I think it's going to be interesting going into like how you see that the market has changed compared to now, which is...
Yeah, so I think it's changed completely in 5 years, to be honest, from when we first started. Because we started when probably the right time, probably the perfect time to start a vintage clothing company we started. So it was like perfect time, perfect place.
Yeah. Well, I think Melbourne is probably the best place for us right now, and probably was always the best place to start, just because we're the only really big vintage store in Melbourne at the moment.
Yeah, for sure. And that's where we come from.
Yeah.
So come from Melbourne, and it's good. Definitely keen to see everything expand and stuff like that.
Yeah. So why don't we get straight into it? Where we do talk about that, like what in 5 years ago today. Or not today, but 5 years ago, what was the vintage community and market like?
Yeah, so like I was saying before, it's super non-existent. Super non-existent. There wasn't that many sellers. There was probably only I don't know, 5, 6, 7 main sellers at the time.
People who go out and find vintage and then, or actually establish Instagram.
Yeah, established Instagrams. There's only 7 people in the whole game, where now there's must be 50 a day I see, I reckon, on my sponsored ads and stuff like that.
And then
that pop up for me.
And the amount of people starting a new vintage company in our DMs must be at least 10 a day.
Yeah, we get 10 DMs a day asking for shout outs and stuff like that, where I don't think it's the best way to go about it. We built our Instagram from start to finish, and our TikTok and everything like that.
Yeah.
I think it's just hard work, and you got to put out good content.
Yeah.
Make reels, make TikToks. Do everything you can, I reckon. Yeah.
I think even when you started, you had to outsource, right, from other countries.
What do you mean?
You had to outsource vintage, when you started the business.
Yeah, I think that was probably the hardest bit of the whole business. Building up the Instagram came after us getting good stock, because everyone's we're going to sort of do that. But getting it straight away, getting it in from other parts of the country, different countries, is why it's so hard and so valuable in Australia.
Yeah. I also think that a lot of companies or new startup companies will ask us where we get our stock, and for us it took maybe, I don't know how, it took maybe a year and a half.
Yep, year and a half.
Yeah, year and a half. And that wasn't from, so we got a question about this a few weeks ago after the last podcast, and they asked, why do you think it's so hard to find vintage in Australian op shops?
Yeah, yeah, that was a question on the DMs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's so hard to find because it's not rotating around. That's the problem. Like
Yeah.
here, people don't put in the bins and stuff like that because it's valuable and they know how valuable it is. Like especially if you're a teenager.
I also think that like you're right there, and there's also the kind of aspect where people like Australian vintage isn't really a thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like it's US vintage.
Yeah, it's mostly US vintage, but at the moment, I'm trying to build up a collection of like Australian band tees, like all Australian merch. But it's hard to find that sort of vintage because there's not much of it around. But I know a lot of smaller resellers that do just go to the op shops. I'm buying a lot off them at the moment.
Yep.
Which they say they find it mostly in like country op shops and stuff like that. So that's how hard it is to get it. You have to like go drive out to the country and try find it in your savers or whatever, you know.
But I didn't know that Nike actually made t-shirts in Australia.
Till last week, yeah.
Yeah, and I found that shirt with the tag that said made in Australia, and I was like, oh, I didn't even know.
Yeah, so with Nike, they made all this stuff mostly like where they're manufacturing it, like Australia or like Greece, and like you see a lot of like unusual tags like Greece, Hawaii, like that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I think because they were making a lot of this stuff without like manufacturing a lot of their stuff without selling it.
Yeah.
Until it obviously got too expensive, like.
And now like you can do it in China for like $2.
Yeah, and like support fast fashion and that sort of stuff where they don't want to support the local.
Yeah.
But I think that was their like goal at the start, to support local manufacturing, but I think it's all just turned around. You know?
Also, like the quality as well, has considerably changed.
Yeah, because you see a Nike tee now, it's like crappy. Like it won't last you three
Those
months.
Dry fit ones.
Yeah, the dry fit ones, or even just general tees from there. They're so thin and like they're just gonna rip apart. So there's no point of even like buying it unless you're gonna go for a run in it or something like that. You know?
Yeah.
Like with that dry fit stuff.
Yeah, for their t-shirts, I think their shorts are good, but I love Nike stuff.
Yeah, I think I rate their shorts because I go running a lot. So
yeah. Yeah, I think it's interesting though that there's not much Australian vintage
or made in
around.
Australian vintage, you know.
Yeah, which I think is like kind of weird because there's so many op shops around. You would expect there to be a lot of vintage.
Yeah, so there's only like 2 real massive tags. There's Top Heavy, which are all Australian made, and there's another tag I always forget. But yeah, those 2 are like the main tags you find for Australian vintage. And there's the only sort of stuff you'll sort of find in the op shops as well.
Yeah. Also, you know what? Another thing I find interesting is that like the US have all their like American sports teams. You would think that there'd be heaps of like AFL vintage.
Yeah,
sports
so
teams.
There's not too much AFL like vintage going around at all. Like surely you'd think there'd be like a whole bunch of stuff from the 90s, but there's not that much floating around, which is like, I think, a little bit concerning. But that's the reason why it's so hard to get sort of any vintage, because it all comes from the US. So
yeah,
like it doesn't come from Australia because a lot of stuff wasn't manufactured here. It's mostly like manufactured in the US, so because we're paying in the US dollar to get all the stuff over here, you know.
Yeah.
That's why people like, oh, you're so expensive. It's like, well, you know.
Yeah. Also, you're getting it from like London and like Europe.
Yeah, and like that's where it's even more expensive because, like, the dollar is a lot more like expensive, you know.
Yeah, and our dollar's never been very good compared to the US anyway.
Yeah.
So.
And it fluctuates so much. So it's like, oh, one time it might be this much, and the next time it might be that much, you know.
But I think what people see when they come into our store, they're like, oh, that you get this for like $2. And they're like, you can get this.
Yeah, we see it in all the comments and the TikToks and stuff. It's like, oh, it's an op shop. And it's like, well, it's not. If you went to an op shop in Australia, like you'd maybe find one item in every 10 op shops.
Yeah.
And because we used to do it, that's when we first started. Me and Stu used to go to like op shops every weekend, every day. Yeah. And we'd find 2 items if we're lucky in the whole day.
Yeah. But why do you think you're only finding the 2 items though? Like, do you think it's people not donating their old stuff, or do you think people are just throwing their stuff out?
No, I think people like donate. I still donate all my clothes. I just think teenagers see the value in it, or they go through their parents' like cupboards and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and then they just grab it off their parents' cupboard, and then they obviously know the value of it, like an old Billabong top, which you find like a lot of in Australia, or like a button-up Billabong, like that was like a dime a dozen, you know, which you're like, I think, yeah.
You're looking back at it, you're like, damn, I wish I kept that like sweater or something.
Yeah, or all the parents that come into the store are like, oh, damn, I wish I'd saved that rock too. It'd be worth like so much these days, you know.
But they just gave it to like Goodwill
or
something, and then like now it's worth like $500.
Yeah, especially like any Australia tour stuff. So hard to get.
Why?
Just because there wasn't that many t-shirts like manufactured. I got recently my last pickup, which was last week. I brought a 97 Big Day Out t-shirt.
How much for?
It was 120.
120.
Yeah, it was an XL. It was a bit of a boxy fit, but
and it had holes all over it.
Yeah, it had holes all over it, but that's what I sort of like. I like all the wear around the collar and stuff like that. But that's sort of the items I buy. Like you don't see that many like Big Day Out tees.
Yeah, and
it's only like an Australian thing, and it had like all like New Zealand and Australia. So I had like Auckland, where I'm from. Yeah, like Melbourne, obviously.
Sydney. Are you from Auckland?
From Auckland.
New Zealand represent.
New Zealand.
Yeah. That's
so it's cool having all the stuff at the back.
Yeah.
You know?
Do you think New Zealand would have the same type of vintage as here or not really?
Yeah, so I followed a lot of the smaller resellers in New Zealand.
Yeah.
Just because I like picking up New Zealand vintage and stuff like that as well.
Yeah.
But sort of the same issue. Like they're not getting it in. Like there's not a lot of volume going into the country.
Do you think it's also because our population is so much smaller than the US? Probably.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. I think it's like because the population's a lot smaller. But like comparing it to 5 years ago to now, when we first started, like we were saying before, when we first started, it was a dime a dozen. There wasn't that much like that many resellers and that sort of stuff. Where now it's sort of like, I was saying it before, there's like 100 accounts popping up a day sort of thing, you know, where there's a lot more vintage coming through Australia.
Yeah.
And hopefully it'll get like recycled into the bins. And then a whole lot more stuff will be coming into the op shops in like the future, hopefully.
That's also something to think about, is that people who are buying vintage now will hopefully like put them in the bins, and then that will recycle and like become like maybe make the vintage community even bigger than it is now. Because it's going to be way more available with like how many people are bringing in vintage at the moment. It's like there has to be like more in the op shops in like 10 years.
Yeah, hopefully. Like you see there's like probably the bigger players are bringing in like thousands and thousands of items a year, you know?
Yeah.
Like we're all bringing in thousands and thousands of items. So they're going to have to get recycled somehow. Like I know at the moment, a lot of people like resell them or like sell them on Facebook Marketplace because you can, because there's not much of it around.
Yeah. Even people message us and be like, how much do you think this is worth? And then we tell them, and then we're like, they're like, oh, so you'll buy for that much? And we're like, no.
you get those ones all the time. Yeah. But yeah, that's what we're gonna, and that's another cool thing that we're gonna start doing. Like once we build up the store, we're gonna start filming trades in the store as well, which I'm looking forward to when we start doing it.
What type of stuff are you looking to trade with though?
It won't be trades, it'll just be buying and selling. So like we'll buy off people that come in. So say you've got a vintage like Harley lying around that you want to get rid of, like we'll buy it for whatever, like 60% of what it's worth, like cash you out. And
so it'll be like one of those like cash converters.
Yeah, cash converters for
vintage
tees. But like that's sort of like what we're gonna go off. So we'll give you like, I don't know, like a store credit. You get more store credit than you'd get cash sort of thing. So say if like the tee's valued at X amount. Yeah. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's good. I think that's going to be super good for people who just want like a vintage item, but like something different.
Yeah. Yeah. Or like when say they might bring in something because they want something different, like you're saying. But yeah, so they're like, oh yeah, I get a $70 store credit. I'm just going to get something else.
Yeah. You know? Yeah. And then you can like, you can sell that t-shirt to someone else who wants that, and then they could do the same thing.
Yeah, that's what I mean. And then they come back and they sell it for whatever. They get their year wear out of it, and then they come back and resell it to us, you know?
And then it's also...
So it's like a cycle. It's like everything with this game is just like a recycle cycle, you know?
Yeah. And then it's like stops clothes from going into landfills and all stuff like that, which is the ultimate goal.
Well, that's our like main like
saying.
Yeah. Like moral or whatever, you know?
Yeah. What is that? What is your main like motto or?
Well, we save thousands of t-shirts going into like landfills a year. Sustainable fashion, which we're pushing massively. Like upcycling your clothes, like using your like vintage stuff to like make a skirt or make a whatever, you know, or make shorts or
or people are doing those like where they take like badges off things and then they put them on like varsity jackets.
Like stuff like that. Or even like I'm seeing a lot of people just like cut out the Nike ticks and then make like a 50 Nike tick t-shirt or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or
I've seen those, but I don't think they're that good. I'd rather just have the like one tick.
But it's like a lot of creative, like people being creative with like a lot of stuff and like
reusing
that's where we sort of what we're doing and like that's what we're like.
Yeah, because
where we want to go.
Clothes are the biggest issue at the moment for like climate change and everything.
Yeah, and landfills and like all that sort of stuff.
So it takes like, how much water does it take to make one t-shirt?
I know, like so much.
I
don't know the proper number, so I'm not going to sort of say it. But it's a lot of like, it's like, I'm pretty sure it's tons. Correct me if I'm wrong, but like tons of water sort of to make a t-shirt, you know?
Yeah. But I think now hopefully more people are getting into vintage now, which you kind of see like even more people coming into the store, like more people interacting with us on Instagram. I think more people are into vintage now.
Than 5 years ago.
Yeah, than 5 years ago, which makes a big difference to the vintage community as well.
Yeah, even with collectors now, when we first started, there was maybe like one or two, all the OGs out there will know. They've been shopping with us the whole time. But there's one or two, and now we got like, I don't know, 20, 30 collectors wanting sort of expensive rock tees and rap tees and like rare Nike and stuff like that, you know?
Yeah. More people have an interest in it.
Yeah, and they're willing to spend the money, which like in America it's massive because they spend like thousands of dollars on tees. And over here, like no one would want to spend over like $100, you know?
Yeah.
But now I think the community's growing and like there's actually some legs and like value to the tees, you know?
I think now people are realizing the value.
Yeah.
Like I think in the last 5 years, I don't think the value of like a vintage rock tee in Australia was quite as the same as an American rock, the exact same t-shirt in America. Like the values just weren't the same. But
like it's like we'd buy a t-shirt for like over $100 in the US or $200 USD and you'd have to sell it for like 500 here, but you wouldn't even get close to like 200 Australian for it. You know?
And then
But now, like, people are willing to pay the price depending on what it is and how rare it is, and people are starting to be a lot more knowledgeable.
Yeah,
I think it's from those like Instagram lives. Everyone gets on the Instagram lives and starts bidding stuff.
But also, like, there's a lot of YouTube videos just about vintage stuff as well.
And which we're gonna
video up, by the way.
Yeah, we're gonna start doing a lot more identifying vintage videos, I think, in the future, just so people don't get like stinged out and stuff like that, you know.
And I noticed that like when I'm on YouTube or like on watching a podcast or something, I like to learn about things that I don't know about. So I think if people start like,
well, in like content and stuff, people want to be educated, you know. If like people want to consume content that's gonna like make them learn, you know.
It's just gonna make them learn and then want to buy stuff. Like I've been looking into shoes. Yeah. And I've just been like getting.
Yeah, you're loving your shoes lately, man. Brooke's been trying to like make us get into the shoe game, and I'm like, it's just we're thinking it's probably like a 5-year plan to get into the shoe game. Like
properly.
Where
like, we're like one of the top.
Yeah, like we'd want like I don't know, like 50 units of sort of like each shoe. Like we're at the moment, it's just not like we need to build up this like vintage and build up our structures before we start. And we need a lot more space as well.
Yeah.
Like once you get into shoes, you would have to get another warehouse just for online.
Maybe 2 warehouses.
Yeah, we'd have to get a warehouse for online, and that would be our main store sort of thing, you know.
Yeah.
And the whole back would just be storage of like shoes and future drops, I reckon.
But I've been like getting into shoes at the moment, and I've just been researching it. And the more I get into them, like the more I'm willing to spend like $700.
Yeah,
You
because
know?
you like learning about the shoe game and that
then
sort of
it's
stuff.
like, even we bought like plums.
Yeah.
Like
That's when we first started. Yeah, we were
Yeah.
thinking of getting into the shoe game early on, but it was too early, and we had like way too much going on.
Yeah.
And it's like, even
we're
now-
like packed.
Even now, it's just like we've got way too much stuff going on with dropping 3 times a day, which is like
Yeah.
consuming our time doing this podcast, doing our YouTubes, and making TikToks.
And like we're pretty much doubling everything we're doing now anyway.
Yeah, like content wise.
But we back to what I was saying. We bought those plums, and you bought them for like 300.
Yeah.
And I looked on the website like maybe an hour ago, and someone was selling them for $780.
Yeah, so they just like increase
And,
in value, which is cool.
And you were just wearing them.
But that's the same. We can bring that back to like vintage tees and stuff though. So like try to think of an example. Let's say Nirvana tees. Back when we first started, you could buy for $50 USD, and then like now the same T-shirt that we could have brought for $50 USD is going for $1,000.
Yeah.
You know, or that Pulp Fiction. When we first went over to the US, we copped it for $150 USD, and now that's also worth over $1,000 USD. You know,
Yeah.
like
There's
crazy money.
But then some people are talking about like with the shoe game especially, that like there's going to be like a bubble where it all pops and people just stop paying that much money. Do you think that would be like the same as like vintage?
No, I think because there's like a lot of variety, like NASCAR tees might pop, or then like something else. Like,
Oh yeah, so it'd be like
so like
nothing
rap.
is-
See, even like rap tees now are going down in value just because there's a lot of like replicas, and the same thing with shoes. A lot of
Yeah.
replicas are being like brought in and stuff like that,
it's
which
just ruining the value
yeah.
of them.
which ruins the value. And then once that stops, it increases in value
But then
again.
there's also like another shoe as well that will come out
Yeah,
that will like overtake that. And even with t-shirts as well, like we have seen it like sports team, like cartoon character ones.
yeah.
They're like heaps of people.
The head ones, the
Yeah.
characters or whatever.
Yeah, like if you're not buying an actual sports team T-shirt, like those cartoon ones will go like crazy. Like
Yeah.
always, they always sell out straight
Yeah,
off the
straight.
drop.
Yeah, which like there's only some, like I don't know, it just goes in trends. Like embroidered stuff like now is selling for so much more.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
I think the reason why everything is like going up in value though is because more people are getting into vintage. Like it just comes back to that.
Yeah. And also like bringing it back now to like Australian vintage and like pricing, and that's where it's sort of going in the same way as the US.
Yeah,
You know? I think that's where we're going.
we're going like on the same path as the US.
Yeah. And like how
And
like
they're killing it,
people
aren't they?
learning about like vintage and stuff like that now, and people are willing to spend more money, like you were saying with your
Yeah.
shoes before. Like you're willing to spend $700, but like once we bring out these videos so people can learn about vintage and stuff like that, and
Yeah,
learn about the tags and like
and
the
why
history, people will more likely want to buy.
a T-shirt for
Yeah.
that much? Well, not 700, but
But like say like a few $100 T-shirt rather than like
Yeah.
I don't know, like $60 T-shirt, you know?
yeah. Because I
'Cause
don't
if-
think I'd ever buy a $700 T-shirt, but I would buy like maybe a $300 T-shirt.
I'll spend probably over $1,000 for a T-shirt.
But you love vintage, like you're a vintage fanatic.
Yeah.
Like you'll go in debt. You're legit. You'll take out a loan to buy like a T-shirt you really want.
I own a vintage store, and I still buy probably like $1,000 worth of vintage for myself a week from
Yeah.
from sellers and stuff like that in the US and over here and stuff like that.
Which is a lot of money. Like even sneakerheads, I swear, don't spend that much money.
Yeah, but I think I don't know, people obviously like buy crypto and are that like addicted to buying cards and stuff like that.
I
I
feel
don't know,
like
it's just another hobby, you know. But it's like,
crypto is like super addicting.
well, we can like, I can always resell it if I don't want it and stuff like that. Most of the stuff just stays in the boxes because I'm collecting most of it, like Australian band tees and stuff like that.
But
you
it's funny, you have like 250 t-shirts in your closet and you wear maybe 3 t-shirts.
Yeah. So I think I was wearing this one on the last potty, maybe not.
No,
I wasn't wearing it.
I don't think so. But you literally have a rotation of maybe three to 5 t-shirts.
I love the boxy fit.
But you have 250 t-shirts. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and then to wrap it up.
Thanks for listening. Episode number 4.
I hope you got some value out of the episode. Our stores open Wednesday to Sunday. Wednesday to Friday is 12 till 5, and then Saturday, Sunday 11 till 3. I'm in the store most weekends, so come through.